Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Our guest today is Dr. Kent Ingle, president of Southeastern University. Kent has been with Southeastern for 12 years, and under his leadership, the university has made tremendous strides. Over the last 5 years, it's doubled its endowment, doubled its student body, and added more than $80 million in new facilities. For these and many other things, Southeastern has been recognized by the Chronicle of Higher Education as one of the fastest-growing private nonprofit baccalaureate institutions in the country. Kent's path to the presidency was not the usual path. He spent 10 years as a television sports anchor for NBC and CBS in Los Angeles and was pastor of a church. Through these experiences, he's learned many lessons, including how to apply holistic and systems thinking to organizations and leadership. And Kent joins us today to talk about what he calls framework leadership, a holistic 4-step approach that uses appreciative inquiry as its foundation to transforming organizations. Kent, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you today.
Likewise, and I am so much looking forward to our conversation. You are the president of Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida. You've been there for about 12 years now.
Yes.
But Lakeland, and especially Southeastern, looks very different than what you first took over.
Yes,
Tell us
definitely.
a little bit about your background, because your background is fascinating to me.
As you mentioned, I am the 15th president of Southeastern University and now have served in this role for about 15 years. But prior to that, actually had 2 other careers. My first career was actually in television sports, and I spent a decade in television and loved that role. And in fact, every so often I miss that role and wish I could step back into it because it was an amazing opportunity to meet so many incredible people and just love that. I love broadcasting. But I did that for 10 years and then stepped into ministry leadership and had the privilege to be lead pastor of a church that we planted in Northwest Los Angeles and served in that role for 10 years. And then went into higher education, became the dean of the College of Ministry and Theology at Northwest University, located in Seattle, Washington. Served there for about 6 years, and then became the president at Southeastern University.
Well, that's quite a leap from sports to ministry to higher ed.
Yes.
Does it feel like a whirlwind to you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have thoroughly enjoyed every role that I've had the privilege to serve in. There's 2 things that have always connected those roles, 2 things that I've been very passionate about. Those 2 things are serving people. I love to work with people, encourage people, empower them, come alongside them to make them the best that they can be. And I've loved that. And every role that I've served, whether that is in television sports or in higher education, it's coming alongside people. The second thing is I love communication, and all 3 of those involve communication. And I can tell you what I learned in broadcasting, I've been able to use even in ministry leadership and in higher education. So those 2 elements have tied all of those roles together. And I've always found, too, that if you follow your design, kind of the way you're made, your gifts, your talents, your abilities, your experiences, the people that come into your life, all of those help you to know what career to step into or when to change careers. So it has been an amazing journey, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, you certainly have the radio voice that goes with the television for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And, being in the ministry, you've got to ask good questions. You've got to be able to listen well. And those are all traits that are incredibly important for a university president as well.
Right, absolutely. I mean, your job, especially, when I look at my role as president, we have the opportunity to come alongside a generation of students that we see are going to become incredible solutions to issues and challenges and solutions to people groups that you have the chance to shape and mold. You get to pour in wisdom, knowledge, education into their lives. And so it's so important that you have the ability to relate, communicate, and know how to lead them effectively so they can step out into their calling or their career of choice.
And that takes us right into what we were going to talk about today, was how you've used this holistic thinking to turn around Southeastern. But before we get into that, you talked about one of the first concepts of what you call framework leadership, which is listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was being interviewed, it was the final couple of days before the Board of Trustees would take that vote to elect the next president. But those 2 days started like at 7 in the morning, didn't end until 10 at night. I met with every constituency group you can imagine, from faculty, staff, students, to alumni, to donors, to community leaders. And of course, they want to hear from you. They want to know your story, and they want to ask questions. And of course, the number one question that they ask, in fact, every group, I would say, ask this same question: what's your vision? And I'll never forget their faces when I answered that question with, I don't have a vision. And you could see on their faces, what do you mean you don't have a, well, you're not going to be our president, that's for sure. I could tell, And then I began to explain it. I said, and I love a principle that one of my favorite writers, Jim Collins, he writes on organizational leadership, and he wrote a book, Good to Great. Many people are familiar with that. But one of the things that he says in that book that resonates so well with me, and I use it all the time, is you can never know the potential of an organization until you know the potential of the people. And I begin to explain to them that a great leader, a visionary leader, will take time to listen, learn everything that he or she can about that organization so that you can begin to formulate. When you take time to listen, learn, discover, you're able to start formulating what would be the right vision with these particular people that are serving in this institution that will help them to excel and go to levels that they've never been before. And I think that absolutely starts with listening, because again, before you know how to reach your destination, you need to know where you are right now and where you want to go. And that starts with active listening.
Active listening, contextual audit, where you are via a SWOT. One of the things I really liked when we spoke a couple of weeks ago was your use of appreciative inquiry. Now, not a whole lot of folks understand what appreciative inquiry is, but to me, it's one of the most powerful change mechanisms you can use.
Yeah, it really is. Every time I utilize this strategic planning process of appreciative inquiry, it's fascinating to see how it unlocks vision. It unlocks, people start to dream about what could be. I mean, that's why they call it appreciate. A lot of organizations, it's very simple. A lot of organizations, they want to start with what's wrong with an organization. And all you want to talk about is the bad, the negative. And I've always believed, approach it, what's good with an organization? What's good about this business, or what's good about this university? And when you start to do that, and then you start asking them specific questions like, if you could dream about what this place would look like in 5 years and 10 years, what would that be? And that process it just creates this desire to dream and focus on what the future really could look like with your particular context and role and opportunity. So I've always enjoyed using appreciative inquiry, and definitely it sets the pace for what can be an amazing mission and an amazing vision.
It is so powerful, and so few people use it nowadays. I mean, I use it with my business frequently. Whether you call it appreciative inquiry, you call it the magic balloon ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you get people thinking, look back at where, from the future is how you got here and what's great about the organization. How do you appreciate what's going on? And that unlocks so much creativity in an organization.
Yeah, and it also sets your organization, it creates differentiation too, because you realize, especially with the people, when you unlock dreams inside people, those particular people that are there at that organization, again, you want to celebrate their uniqueness and their experience and their gifts and talents and abilities, because if you utilize that, then you're going to be able to do things that other organizations can't do. And that's actually what sets your university apart from another university. It makes it unique.
Great way to look at it. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But yes, every organization, it's like we talk about boards of directors. When you've seen one board, you've seen one board. When you've
Right.
seen one
Yeah.
university, you've seen one university. It's made up of people, which they all are, but each group of people is unique. How do you leverage those strengths that they have to make it a unique place and take it to new levels?
Right, right. And you discover that when you listen and when you use appreciation to celebrate and move forward in building a phrase I always say, we're always building a map to a place we've never been before, because if we're going to grow and achieve great success, we're going places we've never been before.
Absolutely. And, a couple of other things that go with your leadership, your framework leadership, is clarifying goals and vision, which comes right out of the appreciative inquiry. And I think one of the most important things, and where many folks fall down, most institutions, is aligning the vision, the strategy, the structures, and the people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you've taken the time to listen, once you've audited the context, understanding, again, the challenges, the competition, the limitations, the people, the resources, all of that, and then you start clarifying the goal where you are creating that careful, intentional observer, receiver, and provider of feedback, making sure that everybody's on the same page, then you're ready to start aligning the vision. And I've always believed leaders who carefully attend to alignment of people and strategies and processes, you're going to create an engine for velocity amidst change. And good alignment will bring about that sense of flow, which, when you think about it, it's an environment where people are operating at such a high capacity without need for lots of managing or instructing. People just naturally begin to respond and do what's needed to make the organization healthy, strong, an organization that will grow.
A good change process, which is where we're going next, through that roller coaster of change. And when you come out the other side, you've got that kind of an organization, a group of self-starters. They know what's necessary and they're willing to take that. But it also takes a special kind of leader to be able to give that permission and empower their people.
Yeah. What you do as a leader to create a strong alignment is you build a team of people with diverse gifts, diverse viewpoints, abilities, temperaments, and backgrounds, because you know that often the breakthrough that you're seeking depends on creativity and intuitiveness and relentless questioning of assumptions. You want that so that you can move forward. And I think when you create a diverse team that is united by a common person, then it naturally will align the vision and focus on the long-term mission of the organization.
Why leadership is so critical, because you says it focuses around one person, but it also focuses around that one concept. And when that leader is able to step back and say, everyone here is a leader, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. And I think also you recognize with your people and you constantly communicate with these people. I talk about it like a calling. This is not just a job, but you are called here. You are an important part of who we are and what we get to do. And we want to celebrate your contribution. And when a leader, approaches it that way, I'm going to tell you, it creates an amazing culture of empowerment and collaboration. And people are just anxious to be a part of what's happening in that, organization, in that environment. And it just, again, it creates that engine for velocity amid change. I mean, you can move quicker, faster towards the kind of growth that you want to see happen.
So important what you talk about. I can remember years ago, one of my first, after leaving the Navy, and, we talked about, I used to fly airplanes and spy on people for a living.
Yes.
Dell Computer. And Michael Dell had built an amazing organization. This was back in the mid-90s. And they would get the sales teams together after every quarter and they would celebrate. Here are your new goals, but before we have the new goals, let's celebrate those people who made the goals. What a way to really show off and appreciate your people.
Yeah. And we do that. We build in regular patterns of celebration where we do get to celebrate what we've achieved because, again, it's like fuel that creates continual energy, excitement to reach new milestones of celebration. So it's very important that you do take the time to celebrate with people on achieving what you know the organization needs to achieve.
So let's into the situation. You came on 12, 15 years ago to Southeastern. What facing?
Yeah, the context when I came as president, they had gone 2 years without a president. The former president had served about 10 years, had grown the university. Literally, the university was kind of bankrupt. And the auditors felt like, I don't know if this thing can survive. And the board of trustees felt like, no, let's give it one more shot. They brought in a terrific change leader, Dr. Mark Rutland, and he came in and began to build the university and, again, use system development, much like framework leadership. And they grew from about 600 students over that 10 years to about 3,400 students. Then he went on to become president of Oral Roberts University, but they went 2 years between his leadership and my leadership. And everybody knows no organization does well when you have no leadership for that length of time. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened to Southeastern University. Over that 2-year period, they lost over 1,000 students in enrollment. It translated to quite a bit of a revenue loss to the university. And so the task at hand was to take an organization that had definitely plateaued and now on decline. We needed to turn it around and create a strategy that would make sure that we were on the trajectory of growing again, building a map to places again we've never been before. And so that was the task, and that's why we use the system that we use. We realized there were crucial, urgent issues that we would have to face: enrollment, we'd have to face systems development, we'd have to face governance, we would have to face cultural issues because morale was down because of that 2-year lack of leadership. So we would have to create a system that would help us design a new visionary framework, which would have, I've always felt like a visionary framework has 3 components: principles that will help you lead the change, principles that create values. This is who we want to become as an organization. And then the third thing is the actual strategy that we will use to accomplish the growth. And that's why we use the framing system. And again, we've kind of touched on that: listening, auditing the context, clarifying the goals, and aligning the vision. And out of that created the new vision that we would need to lead SCU to growth.
The things when we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, we talked about sigmoid curves.
Yes.
And it fascinated me because you're the first president that I've spoken with who actually thought about these type of things as a product launch.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what the sigmoid curve is and how it's applicable.
Yeah, the sigmoid curve is all about organizational growth and health. And actually, the sigmoid curve is the process for any living organization. You have the start of life, you have the birth of an organization, and you start the climb of growth. And of course, as you start the climb of growth, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be issues that you're going to face, the unexpected things. You'll work through those, but you're continuing to grow because you have your system in place that creates the start of what we call a new curve. What happens is organizations do start to grow. They start to see change. But here's a dilemma. A lot of organizations, they don't stop and reflect on where they're at in the process of that growth to create a new curve of growth. A lot of organizations think, well, why do I need to do anything different or even check out the context of what's going on? Because we're growing, everything's working. But that's most often the time that you really need to make change. And so we're constantly, in fact, if you don't create a new curve, even at the height of your great success, you could start to plateau and start on a decline. And that's what happens. And I've always found too, once you make a plateau and you're starting on that decline, most of the time, if you don't intervene quickly to create a new curve, that organization is going to die. And so that's something that we do constantly. In fact, every year, our leadership team or our cabinet, we have what we call a new curve retreat, where we sit down and all of our VPs have worked with their downline. They've gone through the framing process where they're listening. What are they hearing? What are they learning? They go through the context. they go through clarification, they go through the alignment process, and we begin to think about what's next. What are some of the new curves that we could develop and start? And we focused on 3 different areas. We usually focus on curriculum development, which is at a university, it's all about creating new programs, relevant programs that meet the issues in the workforce today. We also focus on co-curricular. What are some of the things like athletic programs that are relevant today that we need to focus on? And then experiential education, which is very big today in higher ed, where students get to experience what they're learning in the classroom. They actually get out into the field that they're studying through apprentice programs, through internship programs, through practicum programs. And so we're always focusing out of those 3, how do we create new curves for growth? And as long as we continue to do that, we're going to stay healthy and strong. If we don't, there will come a point in time, like during those 2 years between Dr. Rutland and myself, where the organization, the university could plateau and could start to decline.
One point that I want to go back to, because it's so spot on, but yet I don't hear many folks talking about it, is in your process leading up to your retreats each year. You don't just show up, you have the downlines talking to people, learning about what's going on, what are the new opportunities. It's almost like you're doing a future environmental scanning and SWOT combined, to where you come into the retreat with good data, good information about what could be next.
Right. You definitely want to be data informed so that you can make the right decisions. And that's why framework leadership, the system we use, it's a framework is simply a system of stewardship. That which is given to you, that you care and lead, you want to bring your best self, the organization's best self, to the context. In order to do that, you have to take the time to work through those issues with everyone in the organization. It can't be top down, but it has to be grassroots, where everybody's involved in creating this new curve. And that's why it's so important that we're constantly, in fact, I don't think we ever leave the framing process throughout the year. We're always listening, we're always learning, we're always checking out the context so that we can make sure we're understanding what's going on in our environment, what's going on in the workforce, and so forth. Also, I can tell you this, the framing process helps you to handle the unexpected. And of course, all of us had a huge unexpected event hit us 2 years ago with the pandemic. And
really?
If you have a
pandemic,
yeah.
I never heard of it.
Never heard of that, right? I'll tell you, because we have this framework system in play, it was easy to respond to that particular unexpected event, where we could walk through those framing issues and immediately create the kind of learning platform, learning environment that would help our students continue to go forward with their education.
It's neat that you bring that up, because that bottom-up approach, we have a saying that when we do strategic planning, people support what they help create.
Yes.
And if you want people to really support something, i.e., no resistance to change or very little change, a little resistance, you get people's opinions prior to the decision being made.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important that you spend time with the people you have the privilege to serve. That's it. I mean, you have to understand what's important, especially when you audit the context. This is the state where the data stops being numbers and starts being real life people in your organization. We must always remember we are not leading assets, we're leading people. And everything that will ever be accomplished in the organization is by, with, and through the people in your community. So stay close. Do everything you can to encourage them, support them, listen to them, so that you can celebrate again who they are and what contribution they bring to the organization and to the students that come our way, which is our number one product. I mean, we're here for our students, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make it an experience that allows them to flourish and get out into the workforce and do what they feel passionate about doing.
Bring them a story of this. I was doing a strategic plan for an Air Force wing years ago, and pulled out the plan, 500 people in the theater. It was a worldwide organization. So commanding officer, the wing commander, got up and presented the mission, all of those kind of things. And they'd been going through the BRAC process, the base realignment and closure. So it was a completely new mission for them. What was neat was when he started going through the strategies, I heard somebody behind me going, that was my idea.
Wow.
That's where you get the buy-in, is people supporting what they help create.
Yes. And I'll tell you, in that clarifying process, when you clarify goals, that's what you want to discover and celebrate, that people feel like I had a part of this. I had a role in this, and I'm on the same page, and we get to do this together. And that's what's so important. I remember early on, one of the things that we discovered is through the listening process and all of that, they long to have a new mission and create and refine what the old mission was and celebrate something new. And we went through that process. And again, everybody was a part of that organizational process. And one day I was walking the university grounds and came upon one of our groundskeepers in our traditional campuses in Lakeland, Florida. It's like living on a resort. I mean, you have all the palm trees and all of that. And we have a grounds crew that just absolutely do an incredible job at keeping the grounds beautiful. But I went up to one that I had not met, and I asked the person, what is it that you do? And I was expecting that person to tell me exactly how they do their job. And what they did was said, I'll tell you what I do, Mr. President. And they articulated the brand new mission. I'm about the mission of the university. And I thought, that's it. When people are all on the same page and they feel a part of it, that's going to empower them in what they do on an individual basis. But, they didn't tell me I do this specifically. They said, no, I'm here to do the mission. And that's what makes man, we're doing this right.
We go back to where we started with Jim Collins. The right
Yes.
people on the right bus in the right seats. You can do amazing things.
Absolutely. No, it's wonderful to be a part of that.
So, and, one of the things that really struck me was you don't do a cookie cutter approach. You've got multiple campuses all over the country. I mean, I think I remember over 1,000 campuses.
No, we don't have quite that many. We have.
Was that next year? Sorry.
Yeah, that'll probably be with the next 3 to 5 years. But right now we have a little over 200 campuses nationwide. And then we're also now overseas. We're in Moldova, Uganda, Brazil. We're about to launch in Argentina, and we continue to grow in those fields. But again, part of the process that we discovered, again, we want to meet the 3 most important issues in higher ed today right now, which is accessibility. People want access to education, whether that's from certification all the way up to graduate level, doctoral level programming. They want access, and we want to create, and we use the phrase around here, a menu of access. And then they want affordability. How do you drive down the cost of education? I think, in my opinion, and I hope other presidents feel this way too, I believe it's the responsibility of the university to drive down some of those costs. Now on a traditional campus, you're going to have fixed costs. You're going to have the inflationary costs that come with that. And yeah, you're probably going to, raise some tuition issues there. But when it comes to somehow creating a menu of cost effectiveness or driving down tuition, you can do that. And that's where our network campuses were able to do that. We're able to go out into communities across the nation and literally around the world now, say, what are your educational needs? We'll provide those programs. They have the buildings. So the overhead cost is not there for our major university. Therefore, we're able to cut the cost of our degree programs by 2/3 of what it would be if you came to our traditional campus. Then you add Pell Grants to that and other forms of scholarshiping. Many of those students that go to one of our network campuses literally can graduate debt-free, which is, of course, a major issue today in higher education. But we can go out there and we can provide the educational needs for that community and for that workforce. And what we do is we DNA, I call it DNA driving it. We don't say, well, we'll just give you this cookie cutter program and you slap it into your community. No, what's unique about, we kind of do the framework process. What's unique about this context? What do they value? How can we create a program that meets that and, of course, also meets the accreditation standards, because that's extremely important. We want to make sure our programs have integrity to it, and that's where accreditation comes into play. But yeah, that's enabled us to expand our network. So, and that's why we've seen tremendous growth. I mean, when I started, the university was about 2,200 students, and today we're well over 10,000 students. And that's because, again, we have looked at these issues and have gone out there and tried to meet the needs that higher education is wanting.
Well, most institutions do what they call enrollment management or strategic enrollment management. You're doing strategic thinking, period. Holistic thinking, systems thinking, and you're applying that to higher ed. Kudos to you. You're doing a great job with this.
Thank you. It's we love it. It's been a great journey.
Kent, 3 takeaways for your fellow presidents. I mean, you've done a phenomenal job. What are the key learnings that they might be able to apply to their institutions?
Well, I think, take time to get to know your amazing people that are in that organization. And again, that happens when you spend time with them. One of the things that you're going to need as a leader, whether it's a president or a leader of any organization, you want trust. You want people that truly want to listen, learn, discover, and be a part of the solution that creates growth and health. And that only happens when you take the time to spend with people. You cannot be isolated. You cannot sit in your office all the time. You've got to be with your people. And I'm constantly doing that, walking and having conversations and spending time, being very intentional of that. So I just would encourage every leader, make sure you're building that into your discipline routine as a leader. So that would be probably the number one, take. Then the second thing that I would look at is just intentionality. Make sure that you're intentional in everything you do. And that is why you want to be a systems thinker. You want to look, and a systems thinker is basically looking at the big picture, vision and mission, but also looking at all the different parts that connect to each other that accomplish the big picture. And that only happens when you're very intentional. So I encourage you, and part of that intention will include auditing, the context and clarifying communication and celebrations and those kinds of things. So that's important. And then I think the third thing is always making sure that you understand the dynamic of what makes your organization strong, healthy, and growing, and put every effort into honoring that, celebrating the achievements of the people that you have the privilege to serve. And that's always important that you take the time to do that as well. And I think when you do that, I'll tell you, when people come together because they know you care about them and you want to honor who they are, they're with you. They want to see things, they're ready to charge the front and make it happen. So those are things that I would just take away, that I would encourage every leader to really be a part of their discipline routine.
Those are great. Thank you. I remember the first accreditation visit I went to many, many years ago. There's a reason I have such white hair and so little of it, but it's besides the point. The principal there said, kids don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Absolutely.
It's the same thing at university. Employees, faculty, students, they don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care.
I love that.
Are you invested in their future? One of the things that I so much admire about Gordon Gee, who I know, is at the last count, he has had 29 of his VPs go on to be university president.
Wow.
That says a lot about the quality of the man and his leadership.
Absolutely. Definitely a testament to his empowering those that served alongside him.
Absolutely. Kent, what's next for you? What's next for Southeastern?
Oh, we're continuing to create those new curves and excited about some of the new programming that we're developing. We're, again, launching one of the things that we're excited about. We're launching what we call SCU Trades. A lot of community colleges have always been so successful at community trades, and liberal arts universities don't sometimes even look at that. And I think it's a great opportunity, especially post-COVID, where so many people are wanting to change maybe careers. And so we're looking at launching different types of trade programs. And then also that would include what we call SCU Tech, going into the tech field and some of the opportunities there with data science and cybersecurity and coding and so much more. It's always analyzing what are the workforce demands, what can we do to meet those workforce demands and create new ways to deliver education, because that's what it's all about, new ways of delivering education to students who want access to education, and everyone deserves access to education.
Absolutely. And it's our charter, it's our mission in life to help others transform themselves. And it's up to us to provide that environment where they feel safe and they can do that.
Absolutely. And it's a great joy to be a part of that.
It certainly is. Kent, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to the next time.
Great to be with you.
Thanks for listening. And a special thank you to our guest today, Dr. Kent Ingle of Southeastern University, and for his sharing his recipe for transforming a higher ed institution using framework leadership, his holistic approach to change. Tune in next week for our 150th episode with our guest, Amrit Aluwalia, Senior Director of Strategic Insights at Modern Campus and Editor-in-Chief of The Evolution, the online newspaper developed by Modern Campus focused on non-traditional higher education in the transforming post-secondary marketplace. Until next week.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.